Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Martin Bareš, rector of our university, and Irena Radová, dean of the Faculty of Arts, I would like to welcome you to today's lecture by our guest speaker. He is a Russian economist and politician, of course, Michaila Kasjanova, who is presenting in this auditorium for the second time. Michaila Kasjanova was Minister of Finance and then Prime Minister of the Russian Federation from 2000 to 2004. During his period in office, he carried out a significant monetary reform and sought to eliminate Russians' high debt. After criticizing Vladimir Putin's regime and following the outbreak of war in Ukraine, he left Russia and now lives abroad. The title of his lecture today is, you can see it, Russia, a constant threat to neighbors or a breakout of the current path. It is, I suppose, certainly a highly topical issue. Of course, your presence here in this hall is proof of that. I assume that after the lecture, which will be in English, you will be able to ask your questions. And now I would like to give the floor to Rector Martin Bareš, who will briefly greet us.
Thank you, Jiří. Dear colleagues, dear students, dear distinguished guests, Mr. Kasjanov, Mr. Zubov, all of you, Mr. Dean, thank you very much for organizing this for Masarykova University. I'm always glad to be at one of the founding faculties, Faculty of Arts. When I was coming here, I had seen a lot of students coming in and coming out. It's great to have such a dynamic environment in this area or in the center of Brno. And I hope that all the students will enjoy not only today's lecture, but the whole semester and the whole academic year. I was lucky that I was present at this lecture last year of Mr. Kasjanov, and in the meantime, earlier this year, we had met personally in Riga, and we had a lot of discussions on the current situation, which is changing and developing in different ways, and I hope that we will learn something new, we will discuss, and at least I would like to emphasize to think about where the position also of the Czech Republic is in this democratic part of Europe, and how we can also tighten the connection with the democratic people in Russia, like Mikhail and Andrei Zubov, who is, and I'm very proud of it, part of our academic staff at our university. And please, because we are having also important things in our country, we really need to think about and to listen and to discuss. Thank you again. Enjoy.
So now I invite you, Mr. Kasjanov.
Take out there is
Yeah, maybe.
right. It's here. Okay. Well. Dear friends, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, students and experts and dear friends. It is great honor for me to be here again, here in Masarykova University. I remember excellent meeting with you last year, and I just would like to express my gratitude to Rector Martin Babiš and of Professor Hanush. Thank you for organizing this. It's a great honor for me to address again this distinguished audience, and especially young people who just making their minds for current situation and future. Today we will discuss important issues of potential development of the situation in the world now, especially Russia and Ukraine, and of course we will try to have a look what could happen afterwards in the next period of time. But I need my assistant technician who will help me. Or you have a distance? This stuff, yeah. How it works? Tell me. It's just that way. Okay. Forward. All right. Thank you. Before we go just to the future, we have to take a note what is happening now. Just the war. The war already continues for almost 4 years. Putin conducting just aggressive war, unprovoked war to independent Ukraine, and we have already just almost 4 years of these problems. There was a great hope for this year 2025 when President Trump was stepped in a position in the Oval Office and the White House, and we thought that there will be some kind of development, positive development to stop the war. As he promised just literally just next day, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, etc., but 8 months already passed and nothing positive happened till now. It is not pleasant. Easy to say, it's awful situation what we have now. We have many problems. Even after Alaska summit, it's appeared to be that Putin came out of Alaska summit as a winner. He got a silent, we can read this way, a silent permission to continue the war. Prior to that, there was a lot of rhetorics of exposing sanctions. Tough sanctions, as I said, devastating sanctions, awful sanctions, whatever words were used by Mr. Trump. But as a result of Alaska summit, it's appeared to be that as a result of 3 years isolation of Putin, Mr. Trump pulled out Mr. Putin out of isolation and gave him a silent permission to continue the war. That is, unfortunately, the assessment as it is now. And as a result, we see that Putin's decision, Putin's intention, a strong intention to continue this aggressive war. And we see last days, even escalation of his attacks on the civilians. Civilians continue to be killed. During the early months of this year, there was much speculation that during the summer offensive campaign, Putin's army will achieve a lot. And even in March, Putin made a statement himself, declaring that in March, that there are reasons to believe we can finish off, he meant Ukraine. But what we have now, what we have as of today, not a lot of achievements. At that stage, it seemed that Russia finally break Ukraine's Dutch resistance and win the war. But Russia's extremely modest recent achievements on the battlefield show that it was impossible, and it is impossible at the moment, despite of all these attempts of Putin. And open data suggests that casualties were catastrophic. Losses of Russian army during the summer months numbering tens of thousands. That is what we see the casualties for the whole more than 3 years, almost 4 years. You'll see that Russia got killed 250,000 people, and just unrecoverable losses, that's almost 1 million people. But Ukraine, 80,000 people killed. That is a lot for the country. And when a lot of people, almost 10 million people, left Ukraine as refugees. And we still have a question. Whether Ukraine can continue. And we see that is the short explanation of what we have a situation right now. That is Ukrainian population, and this calculation shows that Ukraine still have mobilization ability, still have ability to mobilize 3.7 million Ukrainian men. They left from potential mobilization. Whether it will be done or not, that's what situation will show us. And we shall see, compare what will be next. Putin continues war of attrition. War of attrition, that's what we see. Putin believes he will win this war. Compare the economic potential, you can see the GDP, size of economy, that's 10 times more than Ukraine. You will see military expenditure that's almost twice higher than Ukraine. And you will see mobilization reserve, and as I said already, just 3.7 million potential mobilization people fit for service in Ukraine. But in Russia, 30 million people, 10 times more. And active military personnel on the battlefield, not only battlefield, but of the reserves and just active military personnel, less than 1 million Ukraine and 1,300,000 military is already in place. Can Putin continue? We understand that Ukraine can continue, and they do. But whether Putin can continue, the answers could be absolutely different. You would see that the trade balance, stay stable for the whole this period of time. And the war started in 2022, and you can see that in 2022 there was a huge foreign exchange inflow into Russia. Instead of usual positive trade balance around 150, 200, but in 2022 it was more than 300 billion US dollar. That was unexpected additional revenue Mr. Putin received in his budget. That was due of 3 reasons. One of them is sanctions which immediately European Union exposed on Russia and which disrupted oil supply chains. And secondly, that inventories were on a lower level at that time. And thirdly, post-pandemic demand was growing for oil. And that's why oil price was very, very high. It was almost $120 per barrel. And that's why Putin get these additional things unexpectedly for everyone and even for Putin. But what he did with this money, he immediately invested in the military production. And now Russia produces ammunition 4 times more than whole NATO countries. One Russia and 32 NATO countries, Russia produces 4 times more. And as we see, the trade balance continues to be approximately on the same level, and even with the problems of the current year with exports, still half year of this year 2025 we have just quite good figure in terms of comparison, and the result will be approximately the same as last year. It will be a surplus, big surplus, more than $100 billion US surplus. That will again allow just to economy and especially export industries to survive. What is the structure of Russian exports? Russia, it is export country and very much depends on export, especially of major products. Here you see that major products for export, that's oil and oil, is approximately 45%. The structure of this year, Russian export. Gas now fall down only 10% of Russian export. Metals 15, coal 7, and then timber a little less, and the others a little less. That was shown that 4, I would say, kinds of products produces 80% of Russian exports. Oil, that was, we can see on this graph that during just all these years, every week, Russia gets 1.5 or 2 billion US dollar every week of export of oil. After the price cap was imposed, introduced in December 2022, there was fall down. You will see on the graph that in the first quarter of 23, there was absolutely just a reduction, but afterwards, Putin managed to find a way how to overcome. You remember that, you know, that's the way it's gray fleet or black fleet, whatever, and they trying to overcome this cap, price cap. But now, in the 2025, the oil prices, international prices, lower, and that's why there is no quite need for price cap. Although European Union recently, you know, introduced another cap, it's $47 per barrel, but it will never work until United States will join it. That's why that's useless. Although it's of course political move, but in actual implementation will not give an effect. That's how the oil was exported, and you can see that red that is Northern Europe. Northern Europe countries stopped purchasing Russian oil by the end of the first war year. By the end of 2022, they stopped it. South European, that is gray, South European countries, they stopped purchasing Russian oil only in 2024, by the beginning of 2024. And remaining this year, last year and this year, you know that we have completely different situation with the market. Putin's Russia sending oil in different directions. Other industries. The last 2 years, as a result of sanctions which imposed 3 years ago, just sanctions didn't press immediately Putin for stop the war, but the cumulative effect already just in place. Metallurgy fall down by 4%. It's important 15% of export. That's already fall down. Wood manufacturing down by 8%, and coal mining by 15%. This industry just near to collapse. But we can see what's going with Russian export or gas export. That's interesting picture. Before the war, by the year 2021, Russia exported to European Union, to Europe, 170 billion cubic meters of natural gas. You see these 5 directions, that right lines shown there. These directions just provided export of 170 billion cubic meters. And if another so-called Nord Stream 2 Nord Stream 2 to be adopted, which never happened, that additional 55 billion cubic meters could be exported to there, because the program of European Union was based on Russian gas, because nobody expected that Putin's Russia would behave that way. That was a shock, of course, for everyone. And the 2 blue lines, that is export to Turkey, which continue to take place even now, just without interruptions. Right. That's what we had, and that's what we have just. But in 2024, Russian monopoly Gazprom just announced that they had huge losses of $13 billion because of the loss of most of European gas market. And what we will have, that is great turn of Gazprom to the east. Whether this turn is great, let's discuss it now. Russia has one pipeline, so-called Power of Siberia 1 to China. And it was in 2020, this pipeline, through this pipeline, only 4 billion cubic meters was exported to China, only 4. In 2023, 30 billion cubic meters. This year, 2025, they claim that will be maximum, there will be 38 billion cubic meters to export to China. Let's compare 170 and 38. It's uncomparable, 5 times difference. What's happening with Russian gas industry? People don't know where to pump. All storages full with natural gas. That's why Putin knocking the door of China, asking, let's have another project, let's get just another infrastructure. If Putin ensure Chairman C to have another project, Power of Siberia 2, that will be another 45 billion cubic meters. Still, it is much less than was European market. It's still impossible to replace. It's still impossible to switch all the industry for export for the eastern direction. What is the result we have? That is the change of the eastern turn. You see what was in 21, 40% of Russian trade, export and import, that was European Union. And China was only 14%, and India was only 2%. What we have this year, China completely replaced European Union, 32%, and India was almost nothing, now 17%. European Union only 14, there is no embargo for trade, but still there is trade, but only on 14% of this. Therefore, as a result of those problems I have just mentioned, Putin decided already just conduct this and looking for support of so-called global South. Global South. That's major countries. That's China, India, with the major economies there. And this drift already evident. Unlike just the societies in the global North, which is Europe, United States, and others, the global North has just major values, common values, and uniformed structures of institutions, and global South doesn't. They don't have just anything common. For instance, two major countries, China and India, that's Asian civilizations, they're completely different. They have completely different cultures, completely different current institutional framework. And moreover, these two countries are in a permanent conflict. Sometimes theoretically escalates, reaching border military clashes. In this regard, the question is, what common interest in the global South? The only basic answer could be on this, that is counteracting to the influence of the United States and the West as a whole, which are seen by those countries as some sort of attack of their traditionalism. That is the only. But in the sense of global South has no unity in this sense. If it does arise, but it's only situational actions. For instance, counteracting of Trump's tariffs war. That's the only thing. But it's not. That is not a global interpretation of common vision. They have no clear message of the world order, and they have no values. And unless someone will consider that the empty messages like multipolarity of the world could be taken seriously. But nevertheless, we should emphasize that the role of Global South for Russia, global role to overcoming problems with of Russian economy and Russian isolation, that is very significant role of Global South. Russian leadership is absolutely every day trying to take an active part in forming some kind of framework and institutions, basic things like in the Forum of BRICS or Shanghai Organization for Cooperation. But despite of Putin's all these efforts, the undisputed leader of these organizations is China, and China uses these organizations for promoting their own economic and geopolitical interests, not for Russia. Without broad support from China and quite intensive now cooperation with India, the Putin's Russia unable to exist. In fact, the China right now is the main gateway for foreign trade, and the Chinese yen already effectively become a reserve currency for Russia. Putin has to play along with China, dependence on which has already reached volumes of already critical for countries, for Russia's sovereignty, despite of China's reluctance to resolve those issues with the infrastructural projects. Excuse me. So that is, Chinese government published such a map 2 years ago. You can see this red is the current border of China, but the vision of Chinese is much wider. You see not only Mongolia, but the whole South Siberia and the Far East, including Sakhalin, that's supposed to be just considered to be Chinese. That is the growth of Chinese migrants in the Russian Far East is raising concerns, and for increasing geopolitical influence of China and economic influence. The Silk Road economic belt will additionally expand to flow Chinese labor migrants to Russia. But we shall say in terms of trade relations with China and India, despite of the increased volumes the last couple of years, but still the portion, Russians' share of Russia in the trade volumes of China and India, that's minimum. It's minimum, and it is absolutely clear that major interest of China and India, that is the West, not Russia. War continues. Military expenditure of Russia is growing. Today, I would say, Russian government presented to Duma a new budget, and they playing a game. They shown that there is no increase because just they didn't want to disturb Europeans, they didn't want to disturb President Trump, that they're additionally raising their military expenditure. But we know that this year that's already with more than 170, or I put 170, but already there are some signals and figures from Ministry of Finance that will be higher. But that will be end of the year. But right now the discussion will be that Putin doesn't want to escalate, to increase. But there will be, of course, a further escalation. And in fact, the entire budget could be effectively called as a military one for next year. What the military industry, as I mentioned, just works in the full capacity, and spending increases. And the general question is how to stop Putin. How to stop Putin? The evident answer is money and strength, power, force. The West, that is the world's GDP. The West should spend more to support Ukraine. That is absolutely clear, that discussion going. But we didn't move much. But right now, every politician should realize that I cannot even imagine the President of the United States, the leading country of the whole world order, which was set up after the Second World War, could accept the situation that under colonial of KGB agent Putin just destroyed the whole architecture of security, world security, the world order, and now demanding just to negotiate in his favor and other things here. Not to allow this to happen, actions should be undertaken. What actions? Of course, overall military expenditure of Ukraine now is 110 billion US dollars, of which 60 billion US dollars come from Ukrainian budget. 60 billion. At least 31% of Ukrainian GDP. 31% of Ukrainian GDP. It is incredible. And or 2/3, 67% of their overall expenditure of the government. 2/3 of government expenditure goes to the war. And all others, that's 50 billion, it is coming from the West. Europe's support is 0.3% of Europe's GDP. 0.3%. It's negligible compared with what other countries spent just on the previous wars. I'm talking about America, of course. America also spends just very little, even less than the Europeans, because just they're spending for Korean War or Vietnam War much higher. For Ukraine, war with Putin's Russia is a defense of their civilizational choice. They made this choice. They made a choice. It was a very difficult choice, and it costing a lot for Ukrainian people. Ukraine has been in the very center of civilization rift for a long time, and Ukrainian people made this choice, and the West must support this historical choice of Ukrainian people, even though it is, of course, an open challenge to Putin's Russia. If the West, my answer for the question just is very direct answer for the question how to stop. If the West spends 1% of its GDP for Ukraine next year, the war will finish tomorrow. If even 0.5% of GDP, in 3-4 months, the war will stop. But reality is different. The war continues. Europe has taken a principled, a consistent position. Of course, there is unity, despite a couple of countries of the European Union saying something different, but unity exists. And that's absolutely the case. And leaders of European Union and Great Britain already just for 8 months non-stop, relentlessly trying to ensure Mr. Trump that common support, common actions should be absolutely necessary. Till now, unfortunately, it is unsuccessful. And there is great disagreement. Mr. Putin managed temporarily, I believe temporarily, to destroy transatlantic unity. There is no unity at the moment. There is no unity in NATO. That's the main problem for the situation we're discussing right now. One positive thing Mr. Trump already did, he made a decision to sell, maybe not to supply, but to sell to Europe, passing by to Ukraine, military equipment. That is absolutely necessary thing, that is positive. But all others now coming on the shoulders of European countries. European countries should understand that they have to defend themselves, defend Ukraine, but it means defend themselves, spending a lot of things. And all previous illusions of the prosperity in the upcoming future, just as spending more for social needs, should disappear. They have supported Ukraine much larger, much bigger than before. It will be a very difficult period. Of course, Europe will strengthen Ukraine's ability to defend themselves, but European countries will not refrain, will refrain from fighting together with Ukrainians. Nobody will like to step in the war. It will be a difficult period for Ukraine, because just for European Union, just necessary to take time to take all the burden from the United States to replace their portion. That political decisions already made, and made a decision to spend 4.5% already taken, but 5% already taken, 3.5% in military and infrastructure, 1.5% infrastructure, but they should, some time should pass to implement this in reality. Recent actions of Putin demonstrated again that aggressiveness of Putin is growing. He needs and wants escalation. 19 drones within 6 hours, not one time, within 6 hours, destroying the air space of Poland, NATO country. Not one moment just they bought it as a mistake. Mr. Trump wanted to treat it as a mistake. It was for 6 hours. It was sending and sending. It is deliberate provocation. What we see now, just all those drones in Denmark, Norway, in Germany, and Sweden too. That was another provocation. What Putin wants to achieve by this, he wants to enlarge, to increase his, I would say, ability to behave. He tries to extend boundaries of what is possible, what is allowed to do. And there is no force replace, it means expect something else. And we already noted that the airspace of Estonia, 3 Russian aircrafts was just destroyed, was illegally entering just territory of NATO country Estonia, and spent there 14 minutes there. And of course, the Italian aircraft, which was on duty at that time, just they pushed them out, but that was, till now, there is a great discussion what to do next. And there is no unity among Europeans, among NATO leaders, what to do. One people say, until we see this danger, we don't shut it down. But how you understand it when we're in danger? Of course, I'm not a military specialist, but I think it's a difficult thing. But let's take an example of President Erdogan of Turkey. What he did, it was half a minute in his territory, in his airspace, and the aircraft was shot down immediately. This 14 minutes with deliberate intervention, deliberate provocation. That's what, if it will not be a enforcement, I would say, the special power response. Next will be just, I would say, logistical hubs of NATO countries. Let's see something like that. And we know that in the previous times it was something happened in Czech Republic and in Bulgaria and others, in Germany, in Lithuania. We can see continuation of this. On this stage, my conclusion is that Putin's Russia will continue to be a constant threat to neighbors for a long time. For a long time, I think for a decade. And therefore, European nations and their governments should take this as a already reality and should spend a lot of money to increase their defense and to help Ukraine to defend themselves. Not only Ukrainians, but nations here in Central and Western Europe too. That will not be only not for 2 years, but for a decade. It's a difficult period of time. So, coming to some kind of conclusions. Turn to global south, that was Putin's choice. Will Russians will be prepared to make their decision? It is necessary to understand whether just Russians be able to break out of the current path. It's not an easy answer, but we shall try to see what Russian people just feel now. Propaganda, Putin's propaganda managed to foolish a lot of Russians. And these days, a huge number of Russians, they feel themselves offended. They feel as if the West, and indeed the whole world, take up arms against them, against Russians. On the other hand, it is difficult for them to admit and to recognize that the government of their country conducting unprovoked aggressive war against just neighboring friends, a neighboring country, killing civilians every day. And for them it's difficult to admit. And in fact, they prefer to just to present their mental health. They prefer to close their eyes on this. So cognitive dissonance, that sort of exists. People just, they cannot make up their mind. Only now Russians started understanding that hundreds of thousands of deaths in this war, it is the retribution, some sort of punishment for their silence, for their non-resistance, for their inability to deal with dictators. The dictator exists with his government, which are completely out of people's control. Therefore, endless lies and lawlessness taking place in Russia for years and years. And that's only now just this understanding started to appear. The consequences of the war and potential defeat, along with the decline of living standards, will create a pressure on Russian society in two directions. First direction, that's forward to consolidation of power and people around the dictator. And that reminds something like less Chinese, but Chinese, Iranian, maybe even North Korea's just model, which right now Putin pursues. And in fact, that is global South's choice or Eastern turn. That's already exactly just in Putin's hands. And the second direction, of course, forward increased interest in a modernization agenda, in a formation and a modern democratic European society, and creating a state, democratic state. The second option has a chance for dominance. It's not necessarily the case, but it has a chance for dominance. But I should also emphasize that it's linked also with the sentiment of top administrative elite. In Russia, that always everything happens from the top. Without this, it will be absolutely difficult. We cannot have a revolution like it was 1917. It was completely different story. But this time, that could be the case. And I feel, according to my sources, that people, even around Putin, they already understand that they've gone too far. And the changes in their mentality already started to take place. And of course, another important point is we should not agree with the assumption that Putin's successor would be worse than Putin himself. That's not absolutely the case. The logic, this logic, drives us to the I would say camp or club of do not humiliate Putin, which is absolutely a wrong position, which in a shorthand just shows drives us to another position. Don't let Ukraine win. It's absolutely unacceptable. That's the wrong thing. And I know that here in Europe there are such discussions on the things. Will Russia be able to break out? Will Russians be able to make a civilizational choice? My answer is absolutely, that will be the case. It's not now. Now it's not possible, but in a few years, not more than a decade, Russians will reconfirm their choice they did 30 years ago, and they will make again. They will make their choice towards European normal democratic state, and we'll be back together with you, my friends. Thank you very much. And I'll be happy to answer questions if any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kasjanov, for your interesting lecture. And now I would like to open the floor for discussion, for your questions, commentaries, and so on. But please.
Hello, yes. I would like to ask you 3 questions, if it's possible. My first question is towards economics. You told us that Russia's productivity is slowly decreasing, at least for metals and coal, I believe you said. And I wanted to ask you if it's like stable, if we can say that this decrease is stable, or is it even more, or is it the chance that it will be up?
Yeah, that's already clear. That's already clear even for Putin's economists that Russia's economy already contracting, just falling down. And right now, just this year, they promised there will be the GDP growth like 1.7%, but it will be just already statistical, negligible things here. Russia already on a, I would say, in a recession, technical recession, because 2 quarters ahead, there's already figures show that there is no growth. The only growth is in the military production. All other civilian industries, not only coal and metallurgy, because it's a major part of their export side, that's why I mentioned that, but all others are falling down. And there is a problem with the manpower. Just civilian industries have a lack of labor resources, and that's a big problem. Demographic problem in Russia in general, plus migrants gone out, plus killing people, almost 1 million people incapable to work. That is the growing problems. That's why I would say Putin wants to stop the war, but today on his conditions. We should create a different situation so that he will want to stop on our conditions. That's what the issue of leaders of the United States and the European Union.
I still have some questions if you can. Yes, thank you. My second question is, I hope it won't be traumatic for you. I would like to ask how did you feel, and if it was shocking to you when you learned that Boris Nemtsov has died, and how did the society reacted to that information?
Who died?
Boris Nemtsov.
Oh, Boris Nemtsov was my personal friend and my political partner. We were co-leaders Russia Freedom Party Parnas. Yeah, that's absolutely, it was a shock for me, the personal, and of course it's political. That's killing, to shoot person, leader of opposition, just on the front of Kremlin. That was absolutely shocking thing. That at that time there was clear for me that the whole situation turned in an absolutely wrong direction, and that's as Boris Nemtsov predicted, we will face with big problems. That's what he predicted, full scale invasion. We didn't. I'm frankly tell you, I didn't believe that Putin will start this war in 2022. Till last 2 days when I saw him on television, just understood, now I see that he decided, he mad politically, just not mentally, but politically mad, and started the war. But Boris Nemtsov predicted this. Yeah.
And my final question, final question, yes. My final question is not provocative. I'm generously asking if you believe that a state, a country should have traditions of democracy to build it, because from my point of view, Russia had two moments in the history where it could have been democratic, but it failed. You told that in a decade you believe that Russia will make a choice towards the European side, Western side, and I would like to ask, like, what field do you see for that?
Yeah, you're provoking me for another lecture of our civilizational rift and all these things. Yeah. As I said, I believe that Russians made a choice 30 years ago. And at that time, just as soon as we clean up people's mind from this propaganda and just describe to them what the situation was and what the situation is and how responsible they all are for what Putin did, all these killings. It's not I would say, the violation of law, only those who killing people on the front, but people, by their silence, they now started only to understand they're taking responsibility for this, and I think they will reconsider all the things here, and will make the choice as I mentioned.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you for a really nice presentation. I would like to ask, because you are a critic of the Russian government, if you feel safe in Europe, or do you have to take some security precautions? Thank you.
I don't take any security precautions. If Putin decides just to eliminate, as he did with Boris Nemtsov, he will do this. That's even here in European countries, you have a number of examples. But to live in a situation that you permanently just somewhere follow some by one, you can get crazy. That's why I try to live just normal life. That's life. The gods would protect us.
You mentioned that Russia should, or would, in your opinion, change towards more of an EU alliance stance in a decade. What do you think the public discourse is right now? Let's say you said that the war ends tomorrow and there is new elections in Russia. Do you think that if it was a really diplomatic election, do you think people of Russia culturally would sway more towards Western culture, or would they stay and still elect Putin as their dictator?
Today, the situation is such that, as I said, people fruits of propaganda. And today there is no chance that democratic forces could get any support. First, we have no possibility to have free elections. But if we can imagine that it potentially could be, as I said, we have no support at all. That's why there is no opposition in Russia, because Putin just destroyed everything. He killed, some leaders left Russia. Many people are in jail, and regional activists of our party, just members or leaders of regional branches of our People's Freedom Party, just 4 of them just in jail, sentenced for 8 years, for 4 years or 5 years, for criticism, just for their political position, for criticizing Putin's regime. They didn't escape from Russia as Professor Zubov and I did, and some other our friends, but they were put in jail for their criticism. That's what I'm saying. Today it's not possible. I'm not discussing the situation that today could be elections. There will be a difficult period. If Putin disappears tomorrow, there will be a difficult, I call it gray period, while successors will start gradually changing, step by step, agreeing with some kind of relaxation, relations with the West and inside Russia. That will be a difficult period, and not necessarily free elections. There will be some kind of imitation with the ability of other people to participate, but to come to free elections, we should first clean up people's mind. And I think it will be done during this decade. I call it decade. It could be a little less, but such a possibility does exist.
Do you think that this de-radicalization would be spearheaded by the people of Russia, or would we need to intervene to help them, to guide them through this? Because, like you mentioned, there is a lot of propaganda, and it just doesn't disappear. How do you imagine it would happen over the decade, if you could?
Any successor of Putin will be softer, and any successor will be looking for negotiations with the West. The professors of histories would give me a number of examples. One of them, for instance, Stalin. When Stalin died in March 1953, just even on the ceremony, funeral ceremony, two leaders, Malenkov and Khrushchev, already discussed during funeral ceremony of Stalin. Let's stop the war in Korea. Let's start negotiations with the Americans and the West in general. And in 5 months after this, just the Korean War was stopped. Same will happen with the same people. It looks they are strong and very tough, but they like to stop all their things. They already understand they are hostages of Putin's just political madness. That's why the changes will start from the top, and issue is how to get people raising up on this period of time. That's what, for us, people living here, or those our activists who stay in Russia, that will be the major, absolutely priority and the toughest job to undertake, to explain to people so that they will raise up their voices. But that will be a difficult period, but absolutely positive.
Hello, thank you very much for a very productive lecture. My question is, do you believe that we are heading for some type of military confrontation with the Russian Federation, since the societies in Europe are already divided? I mean, the Russian hybrid warfare is working pretty effectively, and also, as you said, the NATO states are divided on the stance how to react to those Russian military provocations. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it is clear. There should be visible, real actions in I would say, military strength and in the financing. Just in political decisions should be implemented in laws, so that started to be in practice. And of course, that's what we see. People in Germany, for instance, yesterday was elections in Northern Rhine-Westphalia, and they voted with the absolute majority for a ruling coalition, because Germans are afraid of potential war, confrontation, and they support their government to spend more and to protect nations. Same happening in other countries. Say, look in Moldova, finally we're happy that they consolidated society and they voted yesterday again for European choice. They made their civilization choice, and they don't want to lose it. That's why I think for other countries too. For Europeans just started to realize this. Putin needs to understand that the NATO and Europe are strong, and they're ready to reply. And Sweden, yesterday I've heard Swedish Minister of Defense, saying just we already given to our officers who are on duty every night and every day. If something happening, just they pressing the button. It means just strong reply, strong answer for this. Putin is not mad. He just trying to expand his influence, to enlarge the potential activity what is allowed to do. Same happened with the war in Georgia. There was the ceasefire agreement with the major things which Putin's Russia supposed to implement. Nothing was done, nothing was implemented by Putin. But 3 months after, business as usual, United States and European Union. Moreover, American governments just made a reset policy. We understand, Putin said, that's what I already understand. That is special ticket given to me. Now just annexation of Ukraine was absolutely as a direct result of this. Now it's happening the same. If you don't stop him now, there will be next provocation and another expansion somewhere. Moldova was a great victory, great success. All right.
Hello, I just wanted to ask what do you think about the position of Czechia as a state in this conflict? Because many people here, I believe like most of the population of Czechia, believe that we are a small nation, just 10 million people lives here and we can't do much to support Ukraine, and I just wonder what do you think about our potential as a state? What can we do? Thank you.
I think that Czech Republic is not a small country. It is absolutely active member of NATO and a very active member of European Union. And in fact, the president and the current government they already demonstrated their ability just to support Ukraine. And the president of Czechia, of course, is a specialist in this sphere, and he even moderated on some special operations and support, how to support with some military equipment, etc. I think I was absolutely right and consistent position of the Czech government. If Czechia continue to do this, I think that will be a great impetus to the whole European strength.
Thank you.
Good evening. I have a question about if Russians, as you said, in the next 10 years, make a decision towards the shift to Western democracies and being like more peaceful in the international field. Are they able to hold it, in your opinion, for a longer time than like 30, 40 years? Because historically we can see when they made decision after Tsar Nicholas, the war in 30 years came, when they made decision to throw away the communist regime, 30 years later we have Russians in Ukraine, because the propaganda which is there, my family, half of them are from Moscow, and the propaganda which was put to them during the school years, for example, militarism, imperialism, is there very strong. So my question is, are they able to shift also towards this like general opinions about militarism, imperialism, which is very strong in Russia? Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're talking about post-empire syndrome in Russian society. Yeah, there is such a feeling, and say chauvinism, which now Putin encouraging just and cultivating every day that Russians are better and all others, especially former Soviet Union republics like Georgia, Ukraine, or Moldova. That's some not normal country, failed countries, etc., and people not good enough, etc. That is absolutely propaganda goes this way. But if we're coming back, as I said, 30 years ago, in 91, 93, 95, whatever, just it was a difficult period of time, and people made their choice. And of course, that is a vulnerable situation at that time. Now it's absolutely not possible to do this, but people will just see what others will others leave. especially Ukraine. Ukraine, as Putin said, one nation. Of course, it's not one nation, it's a neighbor nation. They very similar. And that's why if they build up democratic state, but they already have better I would say, freedom in the press, for instance, as compared with best time in Russia. If Ukrainians succeed on this, of course, that is an example which raises the special attitude in the hearts and the minds of Russians. Putin is afraid of this. That's one of the reasons why he's fighting for Ukraine. He doesn't need territories. He cannot allow just Ukraine to be successful. That is the issue. And the second issue, he needs respect, personal respect. Person with the problems, personal problems, and he trying to gain respect. He pushed that others would respect him. That's why, as I mentioned, visit to Alaska was like a sweet period of time when with the red carpet and Trump's applauding to him. That was something what he absolutely enjoyed very much on this. But coming back to Russians, as I said, I'm already repeating this again. Propaganda, of course, made the very effective and very cynical, made their job. But it is possible to change, and it depends on Russians themselves and those Russians in particular who understands how to overcome this. I mean, specialists, experts, and most important, politicians, but devoted to politicians devoted to democratic principles. That's what's the only way.
So, the next.
You said that Putin likes to keep pushing the boundaries abroad, for example, the fighter jets and drones in Poland and Sweden. And you proposed that it's good for the countries to reply strongly with military strength. But isn't it possible that these strong replies could spiral out of control, maybe even into a world war?
You see, the Putin tries to make an escalation. NATO leaders are afraid of escalation. But how you can win all this battle without escalation? If you just remember the one of these GDP stuff comparison, yeah, that's here. It's here. Russia produces 1.8% of world GDP. That is the whole economy, 1.8%. USA 27%, EU 17%, UK and Canada 6%. Half of world's GDP, that is countries, NATO countries. And Putin's won 1.8%. How just you allow just this dictator to destroy this? It means you should be decisive, should undertake the absolutely direct efforts to take this serious. What is escalation? Of course, escalation is defend Ukraine, but it's time to show the muscles. I think it's evident. Otherwise, just Putin again will start enlarging his influence, enlarging his provocations, enlarging his criminal activity.
The next one.
Thank you. Mr. Kasjanova, I would like to thank you for your heroic stance, as well as Andrei Borisovich and his lovely wife Olga. I think that not many people in this audience could imagine the pressure and the sadness of being forced out of the motherland. So thank you very much for your heroic stance. And as an Orthodox priest, I would like to ask you as a religious person, because we can see the huge decline of church attendance in Russia. Where did the Russian Orthodox Church made the biggest mistake in approach
to the regime and to the people? This is the first question. Where do you personally see the biggest mistake? And the second question is, how do you imagine the restoration of the church in Russia? What church could do to restore itself in Russia? Thank you very much.
I'm not a great specialist, of course. Professor Zubov, who is a religious, knows very well on this, yeah. But of course, the mistake is absolutely clear. When the patriarch saying just supporting Putin and an aggression, that's absolutely awful. That's not a mistake. That's absolutely wrong, contrary to any normal mentality of Christians. That is absolutely out of normality. It's not a mistake. That is out of that. And restoration, of course, the church should serve a separate way for all those values, Christian values. I don't want to go in details because I'm not a great specialist on this, but it should not support the war and aggressions in any case of this. That's why it's easier. And thank you for your good words about us. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kasjanova, for a great lecture, and I would like to thank all the who asked the questions. Maybe I will put some questions and answers in my personal perspective. One question was that how we, the Czechs, can do that. We are a small nation. Actually, we are moderate-sized nation, but I think first one learn from our own history. Just in these days, there is a very sad anniversary of München dictate, and the politics of appeasement definitely didn't work at the very beginning of the World War II. Second is what we can do as Czechs, and I would like to really emphasize my personal perspective. Go to vote, please, and see how openly or less openly are some, political bodies talking and about pro-Putin's and sharing the pro-Putin's propaganda. And the third perspective, what we can do as a Masarykova University, follow our first president, who invites people from Russia when the communists came in power, and very not non-significant numbers of Russians and other nations left Soviet Union and found the, I hope, new home in First Czechoslovakian Republic. This is actually my perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I completely agree. And in fact, in that period of time you mentioned just last century, that was, I think, Czechoslovakia was the only democratic state in that time. And they really saved Russian immigrants who fighted for just not to be under communist regime at that time. And it was, I think, history reflected this, and those people who judge the history and know they're absolutely grateful to Czech people in that period of time for their principled position. And now, as I mentioned, that's absolutely the case, that Czech Republic has a consistent position in supporting Ukraine and defending those values. Just the people voted for. Why they choosing politicians? Because just they want them to protect those values. They're explaining they devoted to it. I think that's now the same time, and I'm sure that recognition of this comes. And to support Putin's right now policies, Putin's incentive, I cannot see any reasons why it's happening. Because of local propaganda. No, I don't know why, but it is strange for me. Just if in the Czech Republic people somehow just taken a sympathy to Putin's, I would say, explanation of the world, etc., etc. He tried to build up the history himself, but history cannot allow this to do this. He wants Russians to believe him, but not historical, historians. That's strange. I agree, Mr. Rector, with your perceptions.
So we have 10 minutes time for discussion. So next.
As an economist, do you think that in the 1990s, when there was a transition of the Russian economy from central plant to market one, do you think there was a way how to avoid a creation of almighty oligarchy that supported Putin and that created him, that there was some better way just to privatize and manage all the market reforms?
Oh, that's another lecture. Put it this way. We can open this issue as well. Of course, that was absolutely interesting and unpredictable time at that period. And in fact, the main problem was that the leadership of Russia, President Yeltsin, and the team who worked on the reforms, they had to undertake reforms with a very difficult economic situation. And within a 2-year period, people didn't feel any improvement. That's why they started losing power, because the only power was popularity of President Yeltsin, who was directly elected by people. But there was no political forces, real political forces supporting this stuff. As soon as Yeltsin's popularity fell down, the government appeared to be weak. They couldn't perform with the reforms. That's why there was a turmoil, and that's why just oligarchy appeared, because there was Yeltsin chosen the way together with these young reformers, chosen the way for privatization. So to take the group of entrepreneurs just on their part, so that they will support. That's why there was a privatization, which was not absolutely fair, but that was the way how to keep power, not to return power, not to give back to communists. And that time, you remember, if you remember, you don't remember, but you know, just in 1996, in those elections, first the communists had absolute majority. It looks that Zyuganov, leader of communists, will win. Yeltsin had 2% support by that time, by 1996. And Zyuganov 26 or whatever. And within few months, the situation changed, because of what? There was a consolidation of power in Yeltsin's hands, plus support of European leaders. I was part of that support at that time. I was deputy finance minister and undertaking some special efforts, because just President Chirac and Chancellor Kohl decided to help to Yeltsin, and there was the just great arrears and debts of paying pensions and wages for workers, and just we got funds from European countries, and just Yeltsin paid out all these debts, and his popularity raised up, and he was on equal footing with Yeltsin. And the second round, second stage, he won. That was difficult period of time, but it was also a controversial period because of inability, because there was no political stability. And Zhirinovsky and communists just dominated in that period of time. Not completely dominated, but was very strong. And that was another issue that, unlike European countries, Yeltsin didn't pursue the policy of decommunization. That's why a lot of communists and KGB people were in power. That was another issue, aspect which prevented reforms to go just hush. He didn't get the support. He didn't get support in the parliament so that to pursue this policy. And that's why there was compromises on compromises. But we overcome that period of time. And now the fruit of this overcoming of positive fruits, Putin taken in his favor. Putin could be a great leader if he would support his policy on the first term. When we were together, it was the GDP growth was 7% per year, and people's income grew by 15% per year. People already just forgotten about past. They said, bright future ahead. And then Putin taken just, I'll say, silent contract. You people don't step in policy and politics, and I will allow you to make money and to spend as you wish, especially middle class and big cities here. And people enjoy these things. They didn't protect. And that's what we can continue, just all this explanation, just all this history, that's how we come to what we have now.
So.
Hello, thank you for the lecture. You have already illustrated your view on what is, or the position of Czech Republic in this issue, and I want to ask about Slovak Republic, since one of the most active agents and most vocal agents of Russian propaganda in Slovakia are one of the most, or the people who govern our country, and also not to mention our Prime Minister went to meet Putin not once since the beginning of this conflict. So I want to know what is your perception of Slovakia in this. Thank you.
Slovakia is a very good country, yeah, and in fact, the democratic reforms took place in the previous years, just very effectively, and was strong positions here. But again, as a result of propaganda, I don't know just whether just Putin's propaganda was effective there, but the local politicians just changed the situation there, because of course it's easier to believe to populists. They're saying we decide and we make and change everything tomorrow. But real statesmen, real politicians, real statesmen responsible for that, they spending time, years, months and months, just every day of building up reforms and trying to ensure population that if you take these support these reforms, you will take the better situation. If you don't achieve this, you're not elected next time. That's why that's a risky thing. Populists doing differently. They're saying, tomorrow I will give you everything. And then they're blaming again, blaming the previous leaders or future leaders, and they're blaming and again, just populism again. That's what I think that just happened in Slovakia too. Slovakia was quite successful in the pursuing reforms. I knew just leaders and prime ministers of the previous governments. They was absolutely with clear mind. Of course, it's not easy everything to do everything, but I hope just the Slovakian people will reconsider their choice in the next elections.
So I have a last question, Mr. Kasjanov. Do you agree that the worst news for Vladimir Putin is during the last period of time is rearmament of Germany?
What's news or not, but of course for him, such a position what Germany has now, that's absolutely a catastrophe, because he spent so much time for, I would say, buying, I would put this software, buying leaders of industries, of German industries, for many, many years. with the expectation that leaders of industries will have an influence on politicians and will always be in Putin's favor. I know this by facts, and I had many conversations with the different leaders of huge companies of different countries, like Great Britain, United States, France, etc. I say there were a number of tenders for big projects in Russia, and we won this, but that was null and void, and then just German company was given the contract. Putin by that just was giving priority to German industry with the expectation that he through them will have an influence. And to a certain extent he achieved this. But what has happened now, everything changed, and Germany taken a leading position in supporting Ukraine against Putin. For him it's a real difficult situation to analyze. That's why he making this eastern drift just to China. He understands, of course, China is not a partner. Not, I would say, it's a partner for trade, but not a civilizational partner. Because just, of course, Russia is part of Europe, of course, and the majority of Russians live in a geographical Europe. And majority of Russians, of course, they have the same cultural vision, the same civilization, I would say, vision as all other Europeans and all Slavic people and all others here. But Putin already overplayed with himself. And coming to the end, I hope so, with this policy.
So thank you for the answer, and thank you for the whole discussion. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Kasjanova, for your interesting lecture.
Thank you very much.
And I would like to say, after 1 year here at Masarykova University, but it is not our hope. Yeah, our hope is maybe after a year at Masarykova University, but you will come from Moscow. Yeah? Okay, thank you.
Maybe in 1 year not, but in a few years definitely could be the case. Thank you very much indeed. It's really a great pleasure. It's not a pleasure, not good word, just a real honor to discuss and to share the views and have this discussion, a candid discussion. And of course, I hope and I wish the Czech Republic, people of Czech Republic, just the great success and to make a right choice, but to support those directions what we have, to protect ourselves, to protect Czech Republic, to protect Ukraine, to protect the values we all devoted to. Thank you very much.